A summary of the story, A Man of the People, by Chinua Achebe. Summary and analysis of the novel, A Man of the People, by Chinua Achebe. A Man of the People is a novel that chronicles the narrator's encounters with Mr. Nanga. The narrator, who was also a teacher, recounts the rise of Nanga from a primary school teacher to a member of parliament and minister of culture. He recounts what led to his dislike of the minister, his confrontation with him, and what befell the minister. He also details how he stole Chief Nanga's mistress from his hold, and married her, the assassination of the leader of CPC, the view of the Western and European world on his country, the state of affairs in his country, and how his girlfriend betrayed him by sleeping with the minister. Summary of chapters. Chapter 1. Mr. Nanga is expected to address the staff and students of Anata Grammar School in the afternoon. The proprietor and principal of the school, Jonathan Nwige, lines up the students from the main road to the school door. He insists the teachers should also form a line at the end of the students' queue despite the narrator's objection to being treated like children. The school's assembly hall is filled by the villagers. They're entertained by dancers and Hunters Guild in full regalia who are also expected to welcome the Member of Parliament in the same fashion. Known as Chief the Honorable M.A. Nanga, MP, he emerges from his Cadillac wearing damask and gold chains. Mr. Nwige introduces the minister to the teachers starting with the senior tutor. When he shakes the hand of the narrator, the smile on his face turns to a thoughtful one. He waves his left hand impatiently to silence Mr. Nwige before he introduces him to Adalai. Having remembered Adalai's name, and that he had taught him in Standard 3, the minister requests Adalai to visit him after the school is closed for the holiday.
Chapter 2. Adalai had been fortunate in that his secondary and university education were catered for through scholarships. He had hinted to the minister that he'd applied for a scholarship to study a postgraduate certificate of education in London. The minister had, in return, told him they'll pay the Minister of Overseas Training a visit at his home when he, Adalai, comes to the city. Before leaving, the minister gives him the address of his residence.
Chapter 3. A month after Chief Nanga's unexpected invitation to Adalai to visit him, the narrator arrives at his luxurious private residence in the morning. He's warmly welcomed by the minister, and greeted by his wife and children. At about 5 in the evening, they leave to see Mr. Simon Koko, Minister of Overseas Training. They decline to join him for coffee, preferring beer. After sipping his coffee, he drops the cup and the saucer on the table, and jumps on his feet, breathing heavily. He wails they've poisoned him. They want him dead. The steward rushes in after hearing his mastery cry. The minister asks who poisoned his coffee. The steward says it isn't him. He is ordered to call the cook. He returns with the news the cook had gone out. Adalai tells Chief Nanga they should call a doctor. Nanga agrees. The cook is brought by a bodyguard who drags him by his shirt collar. The cook says he hasn't poisoned him. He proves it by drinking it.
Chapter 4. The next morning, the minister wakes Adalai stating he's going to his office. Later, Mrs. Nanga tells Adalai that she and the children will be leaving in 3 days for Anata. Adalai is happy as he'll be able to bring his girlfriend, Elsie, who works in the city, to indulge themselves on sexual ecstasy in his guest room. After having a heavy lunch of porridge yams, he feels drowsy. He considers it not respectable to go and sleep in his room as he does in his house. He takes a nap on the chair while Mr. Nanga is talking with his wife. A car stops outside Nanga's house. 2 American couples, Jean and John, exit from the car.
Chapter 5. Mrs. Nanga and the children leave for Anata on Saturday. On the same day, Mr. Nanga and Adalai are invited to a dinner by Jean and Jean. Unexpectedly, John receives a short notice to attend the opening of a cement company, and a young female lawyer bangs on Mr. Nanga's house at 7 in the evening. Nanga drives Adalai to the dinner before he heads to the International Hotel to pick up the lawyer. Other than Jean and Adalai, the others present at the dinner are a British couple, an American couple, and a middle-aged American Negro. At the end of the dinner, the black American offers to drop off Adalai at Nanga's residence, but Jane insists she'll do so herself. The only 2 left, Jane puts on a record, and they begin to dance. A few minutes later, they make love on her matrimonial bed. At night, she takes Audley on a short drive through the well-lit streets in the city.
Chapter 6. Audley had written to Elsie the day he'd arrived in the city, and visited her the following day, Saturday, at the hospital she's working as a nurse. She's on a night shift, therefore the visit was short. His main reason for visiting her was to confirm whether she'd come to the house. Elsie told him that she'd bring along her friend, also a nurse, for Mr. Nanga. On Thursday evening, Mr. Nanga and Audley are driven to Elsie's workplace to pick them up. Elsie tells them her girlfriend cannot come because she's not feeling well. Mr. Nanga doesn't mind, which astonishes Audley. Mr. Nanga, the Minister of Culture, alongside other dignitaries, had been invited as the guest of honor to open the first ever book exhibition of works by local authors. The event is anticipated to start at 6 in the evening of the same day.
Chapter 7. They leave the function at about 8 in the evening. Chief Nanga had prepared in advance that Elsie should sleep in his wife's bedroom. Audley is the first to retire to his room after dinner. Elsie follows suit to her assigned room, and Nanga is the last to retire to his room. He waits till Nanga leaves the sitting room. He purposes to walk towards Elsie's room, take her with him to his room. Hopefully, Nanga wouldn't know of it. To his astonishment, and saddened by the realization, he goes back to his room. He dozes till a few minutes past 4 in the morning. He packs his things on his suitcase. He changes to his clothes, and leaves the room by the private door. He walks for hours, then returns to Nanga's residence. He meets Nanga outside the gate. He doesn't want to hear anything from him. He can't believe the minister slept with his girlfriend. He takes his suitcase, hails a taxi to drive him to Max's place. He meets his Anata Grammar School's classmate, Maxwell Kukumo, who is a practicing lawyer.
Chapter 8. At night, of the same day he arrived at Max's place, a group of 8 young people, including Max's fiancée, Eunice, converge in Max's house to discuss the political situation in the country, and the formation of a new political party, Common People's Convention, CPC. Audley is enrolled in the party as a foundation member. Some time later, on their own, Audley inquires from Max where he'll get money for the party. Max smiles, saying that they'll get enough to finance ordinary election expenses. He's grateful Audley came at the right moment, as he'll act as an organizing secretary in his constituency.
Chapter 9. On December 23, Audley returns from Bori to Anata. He hires a bicycle in the evening from a bicycle repairer in the market, and rides to Mr. Nanga's home in the village. She's surprised to see him. He offers plausible reasons for his sudden return to the village. After some casual talk, he asks where Edna lives. Mrs. Nanga's firstborn son directs him how to reach there. He finds Edna's father, Odo, sitting on the front room of his hut, making a rope used for tying yams onto erect poles in the barn. He lies to his father and Edna he has been sent by Chief Nanga to greet them, and know the health condition of her mother, who is hospitalized. He offers to take Edna to the hospital on his bicycle. Unfortunately, when descending on a hill, a sheep and her lambs rush out of the roadside from the left. He brakes sharply. The bicycle pitches forward, and Edna is thrown farther up the road. When Audley gets up, he rushes to help Edna on her feet. Some of the food she prepared for her mother lie as waste on the ground. Audley offers to buy for her mother bread and corned beef.
Chapter 10. 2 days later, Audley arrives at Chief Nanga's house in the Anata village at 11 in the morning. He can't locate Edna there. After 2 hours spending in the house, Edna arrives in Mrs. Nanga's car. He's directed by Mrs. Nanga to a room specially reserved for VIPs. Minutes later, Edna enters carrying a tray containing a bottle of beer and glass. He tries to convince her why she shouldn't be married to Chief Nanga. At one time, he wraps his arms around her waist in the room, but she shakes it off. Audley is summoned by Max for consultation, and to be present at the launching of their political party. He returns to Anata village with a newly bought Volkswagen, £800 in currency notes. And the assurance he'll get more of them. Mr. Nweij, the proprietors and principal of Anata Grammar School, hands him a month's salary and a dismissal letter. This is after he learns Adalai is contesting against Chief Nanga. He decides to visit Mrs. Nanga's place. She's furious at seeing Adalai due to the fact Adalai will be contending against her husband. He goes to the hospital where Edna's mother is hospitalized but is informed she's discharged. His next stop is at Edna's home. He doesn't see her father, who is somewhere outside the house. Edna pleads with him to leave because his father is, also, angry at him. Adalai doesn't heed her cries even though he can see the poor girl is terrified. Her father comes to sight and asks him what he's doing there. Her father tells him to wait there, he'll be back soon. He comes out of the house with a machete. Edna calls loudly at her mother because she's afraid Adalai will be fatally wounded by her father. With difficulty, her mother emerges from the hut. An hour or so later, Adalai rises to his feet and walks towards his car. Edna wants to see him off, but her father tells her if she dares to do so, he'll beat her.
Chapter 11. He had come to conclusion that his village would be a safe place as a grassroots level to begin his campaigns, unlike in Anata where he received hostility from the villagers. Knowing he would need bodyguards during his campaigns, he enlists 4 of them who reside in that village. On one particular day, at noon, Chief Nanga lands at Adalai's rural home. His intention is to dissuade Adalai from pursuing his ambition to oust him. He offers him some money and the scholarship he craves for. He doesn't heed his father's advice to take the scholarship and the money, and to respect Chief Nanga. He refuses them, saying he will have none them.
Chapter 12. The next day, Max and his campaign team arrive at Adalai's home in Urua village. He can see they've come with a car, a minibus, and 2 brand new Land Rovers with loudspeakers fitted on the roof. Max suggests they launch their campaign there. Adalai objects because his father is the chairman of POP in the village. His father waves off his son's concern. After the campaign, Adalai drives to Edna's home. She sees her withdrawing hurriedly from the front door. He orders her younger brother to call him. Edna, who is also furious at Adalai, tells him to leave her alone. Whether he likes it or not, she'll get married to Nanga. He asks him why he can't go to his prostitute, Eunice, in the city.
Chapter 13. Adalai comes up with an idea to attend Chief Nanga's inaugural campaign meeting at Anata. He disguises himself by wearing a hat and sunglasses. He parks his car at the post office and pushes through the crowd. He stops when he gets a good view of the podium. He sees Edna sitting on one side of Nanga, and his wife, on the other side. Minutes later, he sees Josiah, the local trader, climbing the few stairs to the dais, and then whispering something to Chief Nanga. Nanga jumps to his feet, searching the crowd. Josiah points his finger at Adalai. Sensing danger, Adalai tries frantically to escape on the crowded ground. He stops when he hears someone on the stage telling the crowd to stop the thief. He turns to see who has called him a thief. The crowd pushes him till he's a few inches to the platform. Chief Nanga calls him to step on the dais. He doesn't expect things would turn out ugly. Edna, who had run where the men were standing to prevent eruption of physical fight between the two, is pushed to the floor of the platform by Nanga. Adalai is unable to shield the slaps, fists and kicks being directed at him. He finds himself hospitalized, having sustained serious injuries. His father, and even Edna, had visited him. He learns later from his party member, Joe, that Max had been killed on the night of election in Abaga. This is after he began investigating an illegal activity carried out by Chief Coco's wife. He's run over by one of Chief Coco's car, from behind, when he alighted from his car. Eunice, who had been missed by a few inches, stood motionless for some minutes before she opened her handbag, took out a pistol, and killed Chief Coco on the spot. The bullets had ripped through the minister's chest. Afterwards, she fell down on Max's body and began to weep. She was arrested by the police who were with Coco, even though some were the minister's disguised thugs in police uniform, but he also learned his car was set ablaze, and that a warrant of arrest was issued against him. The charge was that he's carrying dangerous weapons in his car. Fighting broke between Max's bodyguard and Chief Coco's thugs in Abuga. In Annata, Chief Nanga tried to disband his private army after winning the parliamentary seat, unopposed, for another term. Some of them were not happy with it. The bitter ones started causing havoc among the villagers of Annata, causing unrest in the area as in Abuga. This encouraged other election mobsters to terrorize people in different parts of the country. The young army of the country staged a coup and arrested all the members of the government. They asserted they'd return the nation to the civilians when the country returns to normalcy. Adalai manages to pay Edna's dowry even though it took several tries before Edna's father accepted Adalai to marry her.